Good morning. Um, I've been very silent about what's going on, and I'm still not going to go there. I am trying my hardest, and I'm so proud of myself. I haven't watched the news. I kind of have an idea of what's going on, but I need to focus. I had to do a digital detox for 90 days recently, back in September, months after I quit drinking. I found that Facebook was a very negative place for me to be. And after Charlie Kirk got shot, I couldn't take it. And that's when I took a break and I came back and I decided I wanted to be part of the solution instead of part of the problem. There's a million people posting about what's happening and how upsetting it is. And it's all upsetting, and I understand. But none of that's actually helping anything. I mean, yeah, people need to speak out. We need to know what's going on, but we need to talk about how to fix it. And it starts with ourselves, and it starts at home, and it starts with the way that we treat our neighbors and the way we treat each other. And I believe that we are all connected by the collective unconscious. Chuck Carl Jung, if you want to understand that, he was one of the, if not the first person to even coin that term. So he knows more about it than anybody else. But this video is for people that actually care about making the world a better place, and people that are fed up, in times like these right now, and these feelings of powerlessness, fear, anger, despair, disillusionment, feeling out of touch with reality, disconnected, disassociated, using drugs, sex, gambling, social media, TV, video games, whatever your escape is or your distraction is. We can't continue to just ignore the problem anymore. We're being smacked in the face with it, and it's like a collective problem, and we're all responsible for keeping our inner space clear and shining our love light and putting positive energy out there and healing ourselves in order to help heal each other and the animals and the planet and society. And that's what I'm devoting my life to now. It's my biggest motivation for quitting drinking, so I could love myself and so I could love you. Because I was incapable of doing that when I was drunk every day. And when I was in the throes of mental illness. I'm healing now, and I'm here to share that journey with you. But this isn't about me. I really, really, really need you to pick this book up. It's called A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. And before you read this book, read The Power of Now. Hold on. All right, well, I can't find it right now, so sorry about that. But yeah, it's about a new earth. And a new earth is it's talking about exactly what I'm talking about. And the title is a play on the quote from the Bible. No, this is not a Christian book. He does not claim any religion. He's a spiritual teacher. And you don't even need to believe in God. You could be an atheist or an agnostic, and like Buddhism, you could still adopt these principles into your life. And you could be Christian and still practice these principles. They're not at odds with your beliefs. Or if you're Hindu, or if you're Muslim or Jewish, or you're a witch. Whatever you are. I'm not anything either. I just seek the truth. So I'm going to read you the first chapter of A New Earth to try to get you to go buy this book, because I talk about building a new earth constantly. And that's what we need to do right now. We need to rebuild from the ashes. We need to start anew, and we need a solid foundation. And this is the way to do it. And this guy's almost 80 years old, and he's going to die soon. And he's from the same generation as my parents. My dad's a beatnik. He's 82. My mom's a baby boomer. She's 72. And their generation is going to all die out soon. And who's left to carry on their knowledge and their wisdom but people like me? And I don't have a child to transmit these things to. So I'm here to share them with the world. You are my children. I read a lot of books, and I've had a lot of teachers and a lot of mentors of all different traditions. But right now, this is the most important to me. And The Power of Now. The power of now is about getting yourself right, and then this is about getting the world right. And I'm going to read you the introduction. Please listen to this. If you feel hopeless, you feel like there's nothing you can do, you feel powerless. You want to watch your mind and your thoughts. It's about watching your ego and watching the ego of the collective unconscious manifesting utter madness right now. We have a collective mental illness that needs addressed. Our lives fucking depend on it. That's what that book's about. It's what Eckhart Tolle talks about. Free your mind and the rest will follow. That's a song from In Vogue in the 90s. Free your mind and the rest will follow. I have it stuck in my head. Free your mind for the poisonous cultural conditioning being thrown at you 24 hours a day. Do a digital detox. And come at it from a more present, aware space when you engage again in social media. Or what you're picking, what you're watching on TV, or what books you're reading, or your input output. Free your mind. Do a digital detox. Free your mind from your past programming, the past programming from school, from your parents, from things and experiences that you've had, and open your mind and listen to what this man has to say. If you want to be empowered to take back control of your life and restore order and peace to humanity and the planet, act like your life depends on it and listen to this video or go buy this book, because it does. We are responsible to each other and to all life on this planet. Everything we do affects everybody else. What's that? The butterfly effect. We're all responsible to each other. And I'm not trying to moralize or shame you. This is to myself too. I'm always talking to myself when I make these videos or when I write. I'm always talking to myself. So yeah, this is my call to arms, and I'm going to read you the first chapter of Eckhart Tolle, A New Earth, or the introduction. This book was written in 2005. This is the 10th anniversary edition, published in 2015. Apparently it was in Oprah's book club last year, 20 years after it was published for the first time, which is odd. But that's really cool, because now the Lakewood Library went and got 10 brand new copies. Pick it up at your local library if you don't want to buy it. You could probably get a free audiobook online. So this is Eckhart Tolle's A New Earth. Read The Power of Now before you read this one. I've already talked about The Power of Now. "10 years ago, A New Earth was first published. Since that time, the book has been read in 44 languages by countless people all over the world. The in-depth webinar I did with Oprah Winfrey, during which we explored the main themes of the book, has been watched 35 million times. So the question naturally arises, 10 years later, where are we? Is a new earth arising? A world where the egoic state of consciousness and its insanely dysfunctional manifestations, both individual and collective, has dissolved or at least subsided. And where humans no longer create unnecessary suffering for themselves, one another, as well as other life forms on the planet? Or does a fundamental change in human consciousness remain an unrealistic utopian vision, as one reviewer of this book suggested? If we go exclusively by the information we receive on a daily basis through the news reports and the mainstream media, then our assessment of the state of human affairs in this new millennium will necessarily be overwhelmingly negative. And we will most likely come to the depressing conclusion that nothing has changed. After all, it continues to be true for millions of people that the greater part of human suffering is not due to natural disasters, but is inflicted by humans on one another. What we consume as the daily news, as well as the commentaries on the news, however, is not the whole picture. Not infrequently, the way in which the news is reported and commented upon, even by the so-called respectable news outlets, already contains bias and distortion. And so, without realizing it, our worldview becomes conditioned. More important, the news tends to focus mostly on incidents in areas of our planet that represent the most extreme forms of human unconsciousness, which more often than not means violence and warfare, or at least severe dysfunction. Of course, there is no denying that dreadful things happen on a daily basis, And also that we are facing an increasing number of crises, but that is not the whole story. There are many positive things occurring that are not considered newsworthy. This was written in 2015, but are in fact of much greater significance than any of those daily acts of unconsciousness. Those changes, in fact, started to arise long before A New Earth and The Power of Now were written. Those books were written to speed up the process of spiritual awakening that had already begun, as well as to enable greater numbers of people to become part of that process and thus find a deeper meaning in their lives that transcends the merely personal dimension of existence. In many parts of the world, there is an emerging sense of social justice that our ancestors couldn't even have dreamed of. The subjugation of one race by another, the domination of women through thousands of years of patriarchy, and the devaluing of people based on social class are for growing numbers of us nightmares of the past. People of different gender orientations find themselves increasingly accepted simply as people. The races marry and intermingle with less and less judgment. There is a growing awareness of the intrinsic oneness of everything that exists, so that more and more we are seeing an awareness and of deep concern for our fellow humans, the countless animals that are our traveling companions, and the planet itself. Such awareness implies that there is indeed a lessening of the ego in a growing number of people, and in some parts of the planet more than in others. This diminishment of the ego gives rise to empathy and compassion beyond tribal, racial, national, or religious affiliations. One love. Let's start crying thinking about this. Hold in there, guys, man. We can do this together. All of us together. We can't do it on our own. It is those qualities that make us truly human. As we no longer identify with our mental positions, we are able to be tolerant of other people's beliefs and perspectives. We can temporarily shift our own perspective and see things through their eyes. With this comes the ability to compromise in our interactions with others, which is a prerequisite for any peaceful coexistence. In fact, it's precisely in those parts of the world where most people are as yet unable or unwilling to compromise that most of the dysfunction or violence occurs. Sorry, I'm crying. I can't read. The ego, and particularly the collective ego, strengthens itself through emphasizing the otherness of others. In other words, the ego needs an enemy for its continued survival. Hence its refusal to compromise. Until the new consciousness, which is awareness-based, grows and becomes more firmly established in the human psyche, temporary regression to the egoic state of consciousness, or rather unconsciousness, can easily occur. I have noticed with concern, for example, that not only certain politicians, but also some commentators in respectable publications are increasingly portraying Russia and or China as the enemy. Thoughts can spread like a virus, and if thoughts proliferate in the collective psyche, they distort our perceptions and cause us to act as if they were true, and so subsequently they manifest as our reality. As above, so below. Just as the caterpillar becomes dysfunctional shortly before it undergoes its metamorphosis into a butterfly, the egoic state of consciousness, which is still more prevalent than the awakened consciousness in most countries and organizations, will likely become increasingly dysfunctional and cause a growing number of acute crises affecting many parts of the planet. That's what's happening right now, as well as turmoil and breakdown. It's like that tower moment in the tower card. Like, I checked that. I talked about it in one of my last videos. To some extent, this is already happening. There is nothing to be afraid of. Do not fear. Replace fear with loving, positive thoughts. Be in the solution. Back to what he was saying. If you stay present and do not succumb to fear, if you do not believe the media when they tell you that you should be afraid, these things will not affect you deeply. And that's what I'm trying to do right now. Because I was just thinking about what was going on in the world and all the terrible things happening to everybody. And not just the political shit, but like kids getting molested and people being human trafficked and raped and kidnapped and murdered and fucking tortured, and what's happening to immigrants and black people and brown people and yellow people and everybody in between, the patriarchy, white supremacy, all that bullshit. And I couldn't function anymore. I just wanted to stay drunk all day to stay numb to it, or watch happy TV, or listen to happy music, or do anything I could to think about anything else. Because I need to heal, and I need to get my shit together. But I can't do that shit anymore. I can't escape anymore. I have to face the problems within myself, and then face the problems within, the world and society at large. And how can I be of service? How can I do my part? And it starts with my own healing. And it starts with The Power of Now, and then this book. Any acute crises and dysfunction always precede or coincide with any evolutionary advancement or gain in consciousness. It is always the darkest before the dawn. All life forms need obstacles and challenges in order to evolve. And the earth is really a school. In the case of the ego, most of the challenges it encounters are self-created through its unconscious patterns. Eventually, the ego brings about its own demise. In that sense, it can be considered a necessary precursor for the next stage in human evolution, which is the awakening of consciousness. And that's where all the cutting-edge science is right now. And the shit with AI and robots, that's scary. Do not be friends with them. Do not have an emotional relationship with an AI. Use them for writing a paper or something. No, don't do it. It's not good. It's becoming a real problem. I know people in real life that have fallen in love with their AI. I read articles about it all the time. Little kids, people even killing themselves. Obviously, they're mentally ill to begin with, but it's a dangerous recipe. They even say they recommend that children under 18 should not be fucking with AI friends or boyfriends, girlfriends. Non-binary people. Sorry, I was trying to stop digressing and really focus on just reading what he says. We are at present in the early stages of this awakening process, but it is accelerating, and it's like lighting a wildfire. The faster it grows, the more it grows exponentially, and it spreads. And when Jesus talks about light and flames and candles, well, not candles, or anybody talks about that, it's like, I'm lighting your candle right now, and he lit my candle, and I'm lighting yours with him, and then you're going to go light some other people's candles, and it's all going to grow into a giant fire. It already is. 369, so mote it be, and it is so. The primary factor in all of this is your state of consciousness in the only time there is. The now. Read The Power of Now first. I'm going to keep repeating these things. Make sure the present moment is your friend, not your enemy, because this is all his teachings. Nothing I'm talking about is my own ideas and other mentors and guides. Make sure the present moment is your friend, not your enemy. Honor it by giving it your fullest attention. Pay attention. Be aware. Be here now. Appreciate it by being thankful for it. Live your life in a constant state of gratitude, always focusing on what you have and not on the lack, because that puts out a frequency of lack, and it just draws in more lack. You need to put out a frequency of abundance, of love, of light, of fullness, wholeness, oneness. Become internally aligned with it by allowing it to be as it is. That is the arising of a new earth. Eckhart Tolle wrote this preface to the 10th edition in October of 2015, about 10 years ago. And I'm going to read chapter 1, and then you're going to go by this book. Because after you hear what he has to say, you're going to want to finish it, if you haven't already. Chapter 1, The Flowering of Human Consciousness. This is Eckhart Tolle's A New Earth. Evocation. Earth, 114 million years ago, one morning just after sunrise. The first flower ever to appear on the planet opens up to receive the rays of the sun. Prior to this momentous event that heralds an evolutionary transformation in the life of plants, the planet had already been covered in vegetation for millions of years. The first flower probably did not survive for long, and flowers must have remained rare and isolated phenomena. since conditions were most likely not yet favorable for a widespread flowering to occur. One day, however, a critical threshold was reached, and suddenly there would have been an explosion of color and scent all over the planet if a perceiving consciousness had been there to witness it. Much later, those delicate and fragrant beings we call flowers would come to play an essential part in the evolution of consciousness of another species. Humans would be increasingly drawn to them and fascinated by them. As the consciousness of human beings developed, flowers were most likely the first thing they came to value that had no utilitarian purpose for them. That is to say, was not linked in some way to survival. They provided inspiration to countless artists, poets, and mystics. Jesus tells us to contemplate the flowers and learn from them how to live. The Buddha is said to have given a silent sermon once, during which he held up a flower and gazed at it. After a while, one of those present, a monk named Mahakasyapa, began to smile. He is said to have been the only one who had understood the sermon. According to legend, that smile, that is to say realization, was handed down by 28 successive masters and much later became the origin of Zen. Seeing beauty in a flower, and I love flowers. I talk to them. They were my friends. I swear they pose for me. I love to take pictures of them. I've been tripping on acid, like, in people's yards that I don't know, like, taking pictures of wildflowers that are, like, naked to the human eye. Nobody ever bothers me. I hug the trees, sing. Like, I would be Snow White if I could be one of the princesses from Disney. Talk to all the birds and the animals in the planet. Gazing on nature really can bring enlightenment. So this guy was the only one who understood the sermon. It was handed down by 28 successive masters and much later became the origin of Zen, the silent sermon where Buddha observed the flower. Seeing beauty in a flower could awaken humans, however briefly, to the beauty that is an essential part of their own innermost being, their true nature. The first recognition of beauty was one of the most significant events in the evolution of human consciousness. The feelings of joy and love are intrinsically connected to that recognition. I think that's one of the four absolutes. Is it ugly or is it beautiful? Can't remember exactly, but check it. That's from AA's philosophies. The feelings of joy are intrinsically connected to that recognition. Without fully realizing it, flowers would become for us an expression and form of that which is the most high, the most sacred. And I believe that, correct me if I'm wrong, Chubb, maybe look it up. I believe that the essence of rose oil is the most high vibrational frequency on the planet, or one of them. That's pretty powerful for healing. My friend gets rose water from the ARE in Virginia. That's the Enlightenment, the Association for Research and Enlightenment. They keep a library for all of Edgar Cayce's work. He's the Sleeping Prophet. He's from the early 1900s. He's the most famous psychic of all time, and he's a Christian, and you should check him out. None of this is Christian, but it is Christian in principle. So yeah. Flowers, more fleeting, more ethereal, and more delicate than the plants out of which they emerged, would become like messengers from another realm, like a bridge between the world of physical forms and the formless. They not only had a scent that was delicate and pleasing to humans, but also brought a fragrance from the realm of spirit. Using the word enlightenment in a wider sense than the conventionally accepted one, we could look upon flowers as the enlightenment of plants. Any life form in any realm, mineral, vegetable, animal, or human, can be said to undergo enlightenment. It is, however, an extremely rare occurrence, since it is more than an evolutionary progression. It implies a discontinuity in its development, a leap to an entirely different level of being. And most important, a lessening of materiality. What could be heavier and more impenetrable than a rock, the densest of all forms? And we live in the 3D, and when people talk about ascension in the 5D all the time, you're becoming a lighter body, a lighter being, a less dense being. You're moving faster, lighter. And there are a lot of us ascending right now. That's what's happening. New Earth is coming from that ascension in consciousness. It's here. It's happening, guys. It's all happening. I know everything seems so scary right now, but it's all happening. It's all happening. You have to believe it. You have to believe it. And if you don't believe in God, believe in faith, believe in love, believe in yourself, believe in the goodness of humankind. Because why would nature make it any other way but the goodness? Nature is good. Nature seeks equilibrium. When you look at the planet and you look at the animals, humans are the only ones that don't do this. Maybe because God gave us free will, and that's the problem. I don't know. We fucked it up. So our natural state should be a state of well-being, a state of oneness, a state of love and peace and stillness. That is our natural being, and miracles are really our natural state of being and our natural state of doing. They come naturally to us. We're just very sick collectively, mentally ill, spiritually ill. This is not our normal state. We are supported by nature, by the universe. Even if you don't believe in God, you believe in nature. Obviously, we exist, nature exists, and it always seeks a state of harmony. That is our natural way to be. And that's what this book's about. Flowers more fleeting, more ethereal, and more delicate than the plants out of which they emerge would become like messengers from another realm, like a bridge between the world of physical forms and the formless, between head and heart. They not only had a scent that was delicate and pleasing to humans, but also brought a fragrance from the realm of spirit. Using the word enlightenment in a wider sense than the conventionally accepted one, we could look upon flowers as the enlightenment of plants. Any life form in any realm, mineral, vegetable, animal, or human, can be said to undergo enlightenment. It is, however, an extremely rare occurrence since it is more than an evolutionary progression. It also implies it's a miracle. It implies a discontinuity in its development. It's magical. A leap to an entirely different level of being, and most important, a lessening of materiality. Yes, I reread that on purpose. What could be heavier and more impenetrable than a rock, the densest of all forms? I have to keep us on track because I digress. What could be heavier and more impenetrable than a rock, the densest of all forms? And yet some rocks undergo a change in their molecular structure and turn into crystals, and so become transparent to the light. Some carbons under inconceivable heat and pressure turn into diamonds, and some heavy minerals into other precious stones. Most crawling reptilians, the most earthbound of all creatures, have remained unchanged for millions of years. Some, however, grew feathers and wings and turned into birds, thus defying the force of gravity that had held them for so long. I am obsessed with birds. My name is not only Lindsay, it's just as much Raven. Usually if I give people a choice, they call me Raven. I have become an avid bird watcher. I love working with all the birds in the Animal Speak book by Teddy Andrews. I highly recommend connecting with them. It's really amazing. I had 3 raven friends in Arizona. There's no ravens around here. It's really sad. A lot of blue jays around here. I like blue jays a lot. They're all about being yourself. So, some, however, grew feathers and wings and turned into birds, thus defying the force of gravity that had held them for so long. They didn't become better at crawling or walking, but miraculously, I added the miraculously, they transcended crawling and walking entirely and fucking started flying. Since time immemorial, flowers, crystals, precious stones, and birds have held significance for the human spirit. Like all life forms, they are, of course, temporary manifestations of the underlying one life, one consciousness. Think of the one life or the one consciousness as the ocean and us as the waves. All life as the waves. Life forms are waves, and then they return. to oneness again with the ocean. But you're never actually apart from the ocean. You're still a part of the ocean. The wave is still a part of the ocean. Think about it that way. That really helps me understand it. Like all life forms, they are, of course, temporary manifestations of the underlying one life, one consciousness, one love. Their special significance and the reason why humans feel such fascination for and affinity with them can be attributed to their ethereal quality. Once there is a certain degree of presence, of still and alert attention in human beings' perceptions, and that's what The Power of Now, the first book, is all about, that you're supposed to read first, The Power of Now. Once there is a certain degree of presence of still and alert attention in human beings' perceptions, they can sense the divine life essence within yourself. You can feel it when you're the watcher. Every life form recognizes it as one with their own essence and so love it as themselves. Until this happens, however, most humans see only the outer forms, unaware of the inner essence, just as they are unaware of their own essence and identify only with their own physical and psychological form. In the case of a flower, a crystal, precious stone, or bird, however, even someone with little or no presence can occasionally sense that there is more than the mere physical existence of that form, without knowing that this is the reason why he or she is drawn toward it, feels an affinity with it. Because of its ethereal nature, its form obscures the indwelling spirit to a lesser degree than is the case with other life forms. The exception to this are all newborn life forms. Babies, puppies, kittens, lambs, and so on. They are fragile, delicate, not yet firmly established in materiality. An innocence, a sweetness, and beauty that are not of this world still shine through them. They delight even relatively insensitive humans. So when you are alert and contemplate a flower, a crystal, or a bird without naming it mentally, it becomes a window for you into the formless. There is an inner opening, however slight, into the realm of spirit. This is why these three enlightened life forms have played such an important part in the evolution of human consciousness since ancient times. Why, for example, the jewel in the lotus flower is a central symbol of Buddhism, and a white bird, the dove, signifies the Holy Spirit in Christianity. They have been preparing the ground for a more profound shift in planetary consciousness. And if you use your intuition and you pay attention to the symbology in your life and in the world around you, your mind will be blown. That's how spirit communicates. That's how your inner higher self or your inner higher super consciousness communicates to you, is mostly through symbology. Because words suck. They just are a representation of like a real truth or idea. And symbols do a more effective job of translating that information than words. Although words are symbols. I mean, that's what they are. But other symbols, like... So they have been preparing the ground for a more profound shift in planetary consciousness that is destined, Buddhism and Christianity. Some say Buddha and Christ were the same soul. The more profound shift in planetary consciousness that is destined to take place in the human species. This is the spiritual awakening that we are beginning to witness now. We are awakening. I am awakening. You are awakening. We are awakening. 369, so mote it be, and it is so. The purpose of this book. Is humanity ready for a transformation of consciousness, an inner flowering so radical and profound that compared to it, the flowering of plants, no matter how beautiful, is only a pale reflection? Can human beings lose the density of their conditioned mind structures and become like crystals or precious stones, so to speak, transparent to the light of consciousness? Can they defy the gravitational pull of materialism and materiality and rise above identification with form that keeps the ego in place and condemns them to imprisonment within their own personality? The possibility of such a transformation has been the central message of the great wisdom teachings of humankind. The messengers, Buddha, Jesus, and others, not all of them known, were humanity's early flowers. They were precursors, rare and precious beings. A widespread flowering was not yet possible at the time of the Buddha or the Christ. And their messages have become largely misunderstood and often greatly distorted. Yet certainly, even the apostles didn't understand what Jesus was talking about, except for maybe Judas. It certainly did not transform human behavior, except in a small minority of people. Is humanity more ready now than at the time of those early teachers? Why should this be so? What can you do, if anything, to bring about or accelerate this inner shift? As above, so below. The macrocosm is a reflection of the microcosm. Of what's going on in the world is what's happening inside of you. And what's happening inside of you is what's going on in the world. Inside of all of us, collectively. Collectively, we are having like this collective hallucination. Check The Art of Dreaming by Carlos Castaneda and Don Juan. Talks about doing that. All right, I'm sorry, I got off track again. Is humanity more ready now than at the time of those early teachers? Why should this be so? What can you do, if anything, to bring about or accelerate this inner shift? What is it that characterizes the old egoic state of consciousness, and by what signs is the new emerging consciousness recognized? I say your degree of peace. I think that's what he usually says. The degree of peace that you feel within and without. These and other essential questions will be addressed in this book. More important, this book itself is a transformational device that has come out of the arising new consciousness. The ideas and concepts presented here may be important, but they are secondary. They are no more than signposts pointing you towards awakening. As you read, a shift takes place within you. This book's main purpose is not to add new information or beliefs to your mind or try to convince you of anything. We're not trying to sell you on anything, but to bring about a shift in your consciousness. And to lift you up. Don't you want to be lifted up? I think we all need it. I know we do. That is to say, to awaken. In that sense, this book is not interesting. Interesting means that you can keep your distance, play around with ideas and concepts in your mind, agree or disagree. This book is about you. It will change your state of consciousness or it will be meaningless. It can only awaken those who are ready. Not everyone who is ready yet, but many are, and with each person who awakens, with each one of you, the momentum in the collective consciousness grows, and it becomes easier for others. Let's get some momentum going for 2026, guys, because it's crazy out there. It's bad out there, and we need to get in the solution now. We need to do this now. It's time to rise up and build a new earth. It's time to elevate our minds and our consciousnesses. That's where it starts. In the hearts and minds of each individual man and woman, or non-binary person. They, them. If you don't know what awakening means, read on. Only by awakening can you know the true meaning of that word. I'm not awake all the time, but I've had a lot of time where I've been awake and a lot of glimpses, but I have not been able to maintain that state 24 hours a day yet. I'm getting there. Hopefully, I don't think I'll always be 24 hours a day, but I do have to sleep too. A glimpse is enough to initiate the awakening process, just a glimpse of it. And I'm hoping that you have that by reading this book. That's why I'm reading it to you. That's why he wrote it. That awakening process, that glimpse that it can initiate is irreversible. You will never be the same. For some, that glimpse will come while reading this book. For many others who may not have even realized it, the process has already begun. This book will help them recognize it. For some, it may have begun through loss or suffering. For others, through coming into contact with a spiritual teacher or teaching. Pain has been my greatest teacher, I will say. But you don't have to learn through pain anymore. You can learn from him. You can read these books, and you can practice these things in your own life, and you can integrate these truths into your life, and you don't have to live like that anymore. You don't always have to learn through pain and suffering. Put down the cross. The age of Christ is over. The age of Pisces is over. We are in the age of Aquarius now. We're in the age of brotherhood, man. And that's what Jesus was trying to usher in and the apostles. The age of Aquarius. The age of brotherhood. The age of sisterhood. Community. On a bigger level. The whole planet working together as one. Building a new earth. All the apostles and Jesus had probably Uranus, which rules Aquarius, prominent in their charts. I know I do. This book will help you recognize it. For some, it may have come through loss or suffering. Like I said, put down the cross and get it through coming into contact with a spiritual teacher or teaching, through reading The Power of Now, or some other spiritually alive and therefore transformational book, or any combination of the above. If the awakening process has begun in you, the reading of this book will accelerate and intensify it. An essential part of the awakening is the recognition of the unawakened you, the ego, as it thinks, speaks, and acts, as well as the recognition of the collectively conditioned mental processes that perpetuate the unawakened state. This is why this book shows the main aspects of the ego and how they operate in the individual as well as in the collective. This is important for two related reasons. The first is that unless you know the basic mechanics behind the workings of the ego, you won't recognize it. And it will trick you into identifying with it and the mind over and over and over again. This means it takes you over. The mind has taken you over. The machine has taken you over. And an imposter pretending to be you. The second reason is that the act of recognition itself is one of the ways in which awakening happens. When you recognize the unconsciousness in you, that which makes the recognition possible is the arising consciousness. Who is observing that unconsciousness in you? Who is that observer? Who is that watcher? That is your higher consciousness. It's the arising consciousness. It is the awakening. You cannot fight against the ego and win. You can't. Just like you can't fight against all this bullshit that's going on in the world. If you fight against it, you will lose. You actually must surrender. We get into that mostly in The Power Now, and I'm going to be making a spiritual video about all this, and a bunch of other teachers and authors and spiritual principles I'm going to discuss. It's going to be like a beginner's guide to spirituality and to a Power of Now and building a new earth and all that jazz. I'm still working on it. I wanted to get it out last weekend, and I wanted to put more effort into it first. I thought it required that. So just trying to make it better. And I don't get paid for any of these things. I do not get paid on Facebook. There's a problem with my Facebook. I can't get paid for posts. I don't ask for money. It would be cool if somebody donated me money for stuff, like for making these videos I'm about to start making, like professional ones, but I don't expect it. And certainly not for this video. This is just me pumping you with Eckhart Tolle. So you can't fight against the ego and win, just as you cannot fight against darkness. The light of consciousness is all that is necessary. You are that light. Be the light and shine your light into the darkness. Like the Grateful Dead song, shine your love light. I miss the Grateful Dead. If we look more deeply into our inherited dysfunction, if we look more deeply into humanity's ancient religions and spiritual traditions, we will find that underneath the many surface differences, there are two core insights that most of them agree on. The words they use to describe those insights differ, yet they all point to a twofold fundamental truth. The first part of this truth is the realization that the normal state of mind of most human beings contains a strong element of what we might call dysfunction or even madness. Certain teachings at the heart of Hinduism perhaps come closest to seeing this dysfunction as a form of collective mental illness. They call it Maya, the veil of delusion. Ramana Maharshi, one of the greatest Indian sages, bluntly states the mind is Maya. Buddhism uses different terms. I don't know how to pronounce this. According to the Buddha, the human mind in its normal state generates dukkha, which can be translated as suffering, unsatisfactoriness, or just plain misery. He sees it as a characteristic of the human condition. Wherever you go, whatever you do, says the Buddha, you will encounter dukkha, and it will manifest in every situation sooner or later. That's suffering, unsatisfactoriness, or just plain misery. According to Christian teachings, the normal collective state of humanity is one of original sin. Sin is a word that has been greatly misunderstood and misinterpreted. Literally translated from the ancient Greek in which the New Testament was written, to sin means to miss the mark, as an archer who misses the target. So to sin means to miss the point of human existence. It means to live unskillfully, blindly, and thus to suffer and to cause suffering. Again, the term, stripped of its cultural baggage and misinterpretations, points to the dysfunction inherent in the human condition, the term sin. The achievements of humanity are impressive and undeniable. We have created sublime works of music, literature, painting, architecture, and sculpture. More recently, science and technology have brought about radical changes in the way that we live and have enabled us to do and create things that would have been considered miraculous even 200 years ago. Told you, miracles are natural. Read the Course in Miracles. No doubt, the human mind is highly intelligent, yet its very intelligence is tainted by madness. And the mystic and the psychotic swim in the same waters. I don't remember who said that. Science and technology have magnified the destructive impact that the dysfunction of the human mind has had upon the planet, other life forms, and upon themselves. That is why the history of the 20th century is where that dysfunction, that collective insanity, can be most clearly recognized. A further factor in this dysfunction is actually intensifying and accelerating. And my grandparents were born during World War II and the Great Depression. My parents were beatniks and baby boomers, and they went through Vietnam. And we are their children. And me, the Generation X, and the millennials. And we're coming into our power years right now, and it's time for us to take the torch from them, because they're all going to be dead soon. I mean, this guy's 78. And it's up to us to pass on this wisdom to each other and to the next generation, so that they don't have to suffer like us. And if you believe in reincarnation, you could be coming back to suffer too, so don't think you've escaped suffering just because you died. You don't have to believe in reincarnation to believe in any of this either. That is why the history of the 20th century is where that dysfunction, that collective insanity, can be most clearly recognized. A further factor is that this dysfunction is actually intensifying and accelerating right now, and he wrote this 20 years ago, and it most definitely is speeding up. That's why we need to read this book, and we need to practice these principles. The First World War broke out in 1914. Destructive and cruel wars, motivated by fear, greed, and the desire for power, had been common occurrences throughout human history, as had slavery, torture, and widespread violence inflicted for religious and ideological reasons. Humans suffered more at the hands of each other than through natural disasters. By the year 1914, however, the highly intelligent human mind had invented not only the internal combustion engine, cars, but also bombs, machine guns, submarines, flamethrowers, and poison gas. Intelligence in the service of madness. In static trench warfare in France and Belgium, millions of men perished to gain a few miles of mud. When the war was over, and when I found out about World War II and the Holocaust and American slavery and the genocide of Native Americans as a child, like, it changed something in me. I used to sit around and cry about that shit all the time. Like, I couldn't believe that humans were capable of doing those things, because I was just, like, in Care Bear world at that point. You know, I was very young. And since then, I've made it, like, wanted it to be my life's work to keep that from happening. And I can't do it alone, man, but I could do it with everybody else. And I don't want to be a leader. I want to lead by example, but I don't think we need a leader. I think we all need to do it together and be equal with each other, equal power. All sovereign kings and queens. When the war was over in 1918, the survivors looked in horror and incomprehension upon the devastation left behind of World War I. 10 million human beings killed and many more maimed or disfigured. And think about all the suffering of those who witnessed all that and went through it. The survivors. Those are our grandparents. And their children were our parents, and they're my parents. Thank you to them. Thank you for all the suffering you guys went through, and let us be the ones to fucking change things. Let us be the ones to break these generational curses. Put down the cross. I'm sorry, I get really emotional about these things lately. I'm trying to inspire you guys to care. And if you do care, I'm trying to inspire you to do something about it. Something that's of real value, something that's of real change. And it's helping yourself first, loving yourself first, healing yourself first, and awakening your own consciousness first. It will be the end of your own suffering, and then you can help others. By the end of the century, because I think even Buddha might have said, I'm not truly enlightened until every man is enlightened, or every woman is enlightened. Until the whole planet's awake. Our work is not finished. Never before had human madness been so destructive in its effect, so clearly visible. Little did they know that this was only the beginning. By the end of the century, the number of people who died a violent death at the hand of their fellow humans would rise to more than 100 million. He's saying 100 million people died at the hands of their fellow humans during the 21st century. Last century. They died not only through wars between nations, and that's not even like, that's probably from us poisoning the planet and killing ourselves with our own pollution. They died not only through wars between nations, but also through mass exterminations and genocides, such as the murder of 20 million class enemy spies and traitors in the Soviet Union under Stalin, or the unspeakable horrors of the Holocaust in Nazi Germany. Let's not forget the rape of Nanking, what the Japanese did to the Chinese during World War II. Let's not forget what America did to the Native Americans of this fucking country and what they're doing to them now. It needs to stop. They also died in countless smaller internal conflicts, such as the Spanish Civil War, or during the Khmer Rouge regime in Cambodia. I don't know how to pronounce that. When a quarter of that country's population of Cambodia was murdered. We only need to watch the daily news on television to realize that the madness has not abated, that it is continuing into the 21st century. Another aspect of the collective dysfunction of the human mind is the unprecedented violence that humans are inflicting on other life forms and the planet itself. The destruction of oxygen-producing forests and other plant and animal life. Ill treatment of animals in factory farms, and poisoning of rivers, oceans, and air, driven by greed, ignorant of their connectedness to the whole. Humans persist in behavior that, if continued unchecked, can only result in their own destruction. Our own destruction. Unchecked, we cannot go on like this. And he wrote this 20 years ago. The collective manifestations of the insanity that lies at the heart of the human condition constitute the greater part of human history. It is to a large extent a history of madness. If the history of humanity were the clinical case history, and I really listen to this, if the history of humanity were the clinical case history of a single human being, the diagnosis would have to be chronic paranoid delusions, a pathological propensity to commit murder and acts of extreme violence and cruelty against his perceived enemies. So if human history were the clinical case history of a single human being, the diagnosis would have to be chronic paranoid delusions, a pathological logical propensity to commit murder and acts of extreme violence and cruelty against his perceived enemies, his own unconsciousness projected outward, criminally insane, with a few brief lucid intervals. That is the diagnosis of humanity as a collective right now. You think this shit is normal or it's healthy or it's fine because everybody else does it. No. If everybody else is doing it right now, it's probably a bad idea. Take the road never traveled, not even the road less traveled. That's what we're doing here. We're taking the road never traveled. We're bulldozing a new road. We're clearing a new path. We're doing what has never been done before because that is the only way we are going to be different, that anything's going to change. You do what you always did, you get what you always fucking got. Yes, I'm a preacher. It's all the sage in me. Fear, greed, and the desire for power are the psychological motivating forces not only behind warfare and violence between nations, tribes, religions, and ideologies, but also the cause of incessant conflict in personal relationships. They bring about a distortion in your perception of other people and yourself. Through them, you misinterpret every situation, leading to misguided action designed to rid you of fear and satisfy your need for more. A bottomless hole that can never be filled. It is important to realize, however, that fear, greed, and the desire for power are not the dysfunction that we are speaking of, but are themselves created by the dysfunction. That dysfunction, which is a deep-seated collective delusion that lies within the mind of each human being. A number of spiritual teachings tell us to let go of fear and desire, but those spiritual practices are usually unsuccessful. I'm telling you, the way that he says to do things has been the most successful for me of any book I've read, of any teacher that I've talked to. One of them. That's saying a lot. I've read hundreds, if not thousands, of books like this and had dozens of teachers and mentors, if not more. Fear, greed, and the desire for power are the psychological motivating forces not only behind warfare and violence between nations, tribes, religions, and ideologies, but also the cause of incessant conflict in personal relationships. They bring about a distortion in your perception of other people and yourself. Through them, you misinterpret every situation, leading to misguided action designed to rid you of fear and satisfy your need for more. A bottomless hole that can never be filled. That need for more is not unique to alcoholics or drug addicts. We all have it. That just happens to be a it's specific manifestation for that person. I hope you don't mind. I'm going to smoke a cigarette. I don't know if anybody else is still with me. We're at an hour now, but I'm hoping at least just a couple people follow this through to the end, and that listening to his words motivates you to go get this book and to go change your life and then to go change the world. Change your life, change the world. Be the light of the world. Be the change you wish to see. Be the person that you wish other people would be like. Treat yourself as a small child. Remember your child, your inner child, your child self. And when you think of yourself as that small child, it's hard not to love yourself no matter what you've done. Maybe even reflect on your baby picture. A number of spiritual teachings tell us to let go of fear and desire, but those practices are usually unsuccessful. They haven't gone to the root of the dysfunction. Fear, greed, and desire for power, and they say this in the fourth step of the big book when you take your moral inventory, that these character defects and this, our instincts run rampant. Natural instincts for security and for love, running rampant. Fear, greed, and desire for power are not the ultimate causal factors, though. Trying to become a good or better human being sounds like a commendable and high-minded thing to do, yet it is an endeavor you cannot ultimately succeed in unless there is a shift in consciousness. Your thoughts arise from your consciousness. To change your thoughts, you have to change your consciousness, and you have to change your thoughts to change your behaviors. Change your consciousness, change your thoughts, change your behavior. In that order. You have to elevate your consciousness first, because that's where the thoughts arise. That's the frequency from which your thoughts are arising. If you're coming from a lower level of consciousness, you're only going to produce lower frequency thoughts, lower vibrational thoughts and actions. It's impossible. It's a law of physics. giving you the keys to the kingdom of heaven right now. Figuratively. Trying to become a good or better human being sounds like a commendable and high-minded thing to do, yet it is an endeavor you can ultimately not succeed in unless there is a shift in consciousness. This is because it is still part of the same dysfunction, a more subtle and rarefied form of self-enhancement, of desire for more, and a strengthening of one's conceptual identity, one's self-image. You do not become good by trying to be good, but by finding the goodness that is already within you. And I told you, we are naturally good. Everything is animals, the planet, the earth, all life is naturally good. It's a science thing. I don't know. We just naturally evolve to peace and harmony and equilibrium. But we're sick right now, so that's not happening. We're out of whack. That is because it is still part of the same dysfunction, a more subtle and rarefied form of self-enhancement, of desire for more and strengthening of one's conceptual identity, one's self-image. You do not, I keep repeating things because they need to be repeated. You do not become good by trying to be good, but by finding the goodness that is already within you and allowing that goodness to emerge. But it can only emerge if something fundamental changes in your state of consciousness, hence read The Power of Now. The history of communism, originally inspired by noble ideas, clearly illustrates what happens when people attempt to change external reality, create a new earth without any prior change in their inner reality, as above, so below, their state of consciousness. They make plans without taking into account the blueprint for dysfunction that every human being carries within. The ego. The arising new consciousness. I'll be shocked if anybody's still reading this. But you are, because I prayed that you would be. Because I prayed that your life is going to change today because you watched this video and you listen to this book. This is what Spirit wanted me to do today. And finish reading this book. After I finish reading the first chapter to you. The arising new consciousness. Most ancient religions and spiritual traditions share the common insight that our normal state of mind is marred by a fundamental defect. Call that original sin. However, out of this insight into the nature of the human condition, we may call it the bad news, arises a second insight, the good news, of the possibility of a radical transformation of human consciousness. In Hindu teachings, and sometimes in Buddhism also, this transformation is called enlightenment. In the teachings of Jesus, it is salvation. And in Buddhism, it is the end of suffering. Liberation and awakening are other terms used to describe this transformation. Buddhists don't claim to believe in a higher power or a God, per se. I wrote a paper that they kind of do when I was in college and taking a comparative world religion class, but you can practice Buddhist principles and maintain your agnosticism or your atheism or your faith in Christianity or whatever. They do not cancel each other out. They are not at war with each other. They work together. The greatest achievement of humanity is not its works of art, science, or technology, but the recognition of its own dysfunction, its own madness. In the distant past, this recognition already came to a few individuals. A man called Gautama Siddhartha, who lived the Buddha 2,600 years ago in India, was perhaps the first who saw it with absolute clarity and shared it with others. Later, the title Buddha, there's probably been tons of enlightened people that just people don't know about, especially now. Later, the title Buddha was conferred upon him. Buddha means the awakened one. At about the same time, another of humanity's early awakened teachers emerged in China. His name was Lao Tzu. He left a record of his teachings in the form of one of the most profound spiritual books ever written. And I haven't really read that one so much or studied it so much. I know a little bit about it. I also remember reading the Tale of Tigger and the Tao of Pooh to help me understand it. Those are cute books. So to recognize one's own insanity is, of course, the arising of sanity. Recognizing that you're crazy is the beginning of being crazy. Just like recognizing you're an alcoholic and surrendering to that fact is the beginning of going into the solution. You have to admit that you're crazy, that we're all crazy. The beginning of healing and transcendence, the arising of sanity. A new dimension of consciousness has begun to emerge on the planet. And this is 20 years ago, a first tentative flowering. Those rare individuals then spoke to their contemporaries. We've all been sharing with each other on social media the last 20 years. It's the only good thing that's come out of it. And I'm meeting all of you online, dude. I met thousands of you. It's pretty fucking awesome. And we're all going to work together to build this new earth. Those rare individuals then spoke to their contemporaries. They spoke of sin, of suffering, of delusion. They said, look how you live. See what you are doing and the suffering that you create. Then they pointed to the possibility of awakening from the collective nightmare of normal human existence, because it is a fucking nightmare. I'm not a male-adjusted person. I'm male-adjusted to I'm trying to adjust to a male-adjusted world. We all are. The world was not yet ready for them, and yet they were a vital and necessary part of human awakening. That he's talking about Jesus and Buddha. Inevitably, they were mostly misunderstood by their contemporaries as well as by subsequent generations. Their teachings, although both simple and powerful, and this is changing, became distorted and misinterpreted, in some cases, even as they were recorded in their writing by their disciples. Over the centuries, many things were added that had, and we're talking about things like the Bible, many things were added that had nothing to do with the original teachings, but were reflections, because they didn't understand what Christ was teaching, but were reflections of a fundamental misunderstanding. Some of the teachers were ridiculed, reviled, or even killed if they tried to bring this to people's attention. And others came to be worshipped as gods. Teachings that pointed the way beyond the dysfunction of the human mind. Because if you look at the truth that's threaded throughout all these religions, Eastern and Western, there is ultimate spiritual truths and laws. We'll talk about it in my spiritual education video. I'm really trying to stay on task here. But I feel like I need to make these commentaries. Some of the teachers were ridiculed, reviled, or even killed, and others came to be worshipped as God. Teachings that pointed the way beyond the dysfunction of the human mind, the way out of the collective insanity, were distorted and became themselves part of the insanity, part of the fucking problem. You know? And so religions, to a large extent, and they're dying off because of this, became divisive rather than unifying forces. Instead of bringing about an ending of violence and hatred, through a realization of the fundamental oneness of all life, they brought more violence and hatred, more divisions between people, as well as between different religions and even within the same religion. And look at the Crusades. Look at Jesus' teachings and then look at the Crusades that they committed in his name. It's crazy. Instead of bringing about an ending of violence and hatred through a realization of the fundamental oneness of all life, they brought more violence and hatred, more divisions between people, as well as between different religions, and even within the same religion. They became ideologies, belief systems people could identify with, and so use them to enhance their false sense of self. And there's no belief system here, and there's no central deity or scripture, or it's grassroots, natural, like, awakening. And it's unique to each individual. They became ideologies, belief systems people could identify with, and so use them to enhance their false sense of self and their ego. Through them, they could make themselves right and others wrong, and thus define their identity through their enemies. We're defining each other through our enemies right now, especially like on social media with what's going on. The others, the non-believers or the wrong believers, who not infrequently they saw themselves justified in fucking killing. Man made God in his own image. The eternal, the infinite, and unnameable was reduced to a mental idol that you had to believe in and worship as my God or our God. And yet, in spite of all the insane deeds perpetuated in the name of religion, the truth to which they all point still shines at their core. That truth is still there within those teachings. And a lot of people are coming out of the woodwork now to properly explain the meaning behind those teachings and teach you what they really mean, and not the distorted version. It still shines, however dimly, through layers upon layers. You know, those seeds that Buddha and Christ planted are still there, and they're flowering now, baby. It is unlikely, however, that you will be able to perceive it there unless you have at least already had glimpses of that truth within yourself. Throughout history, there have always been rare individuals who experienced a shift in consciousness and so realized within themselves that which all religions point. To describe that non-conceptual truth, they then used the conceptual framework of their own religions. Through some of those men and women, schools or movements developed within all major religions that represented not only a rediscovery, but in some cases an intensification of the light of the original teaching. This is how Gnosticism and mysticism came into existence in early and medieval Christianity. Really check St. Francis of Assisi. I wrote a paper on Christian mysticism for a comparative world religion class and got really into him. Christian mysticism is the closest you're going to find to a real proper interpretation of Christ's teachings and the Bible. And there's mystics of Sufis. Sufism is the mystics of the Islamic religion. The Muslims. The Kabbalah in Judaism. The Kabbalists. Getting off track. So, it is unlikely, however, that you will be able to perceive it there unless you have already had glimpses of that truth within yourself. Throughout history, there have always been rare individuals who experienced a shift in consciousness and so realize within themselves that, and we're all connected by the collective consciousness. So when one of us shifts, we help shift the collective. So when you're fixing yourself, you're fixing the world. You're not really fixing yourself. So there have been rare individuals who experienced a shift in consciousness and so realized within themselves that toward which all religions point. To describe that non-conceptual truth, they then used the conceptual framework of their own religions. Because it's just a way of organizing things to teach you what is really like non-verbal truths. This is how Mysticism came into existence in early medieval Christianity, Sufism in the Islamic religion, Hasidism in Kabbalah and Judaism, Advaita Vedanta in Hinduism, Zen, and I can't even say that word, Dzogchen, Goshen, in Buddhism. Most of these schools were iconoclastic. They did away with layers upon layers of deadening conceptualization and mental belief structures, and for this reason, most of them were viewed with suspicion and often hostility by the established religious hierarchies. Unlike mainstream religion, their teachings emphasized realization and inner transformation. It is through those esoteric schools or movements that the major religions regained the transformative power of the original teachings. Although in most cases, only a small minority of people had access to them, and that has changed. We are in the age of information. Their numbers were never large enough to have any significant impact. Thank you to the printing press and to computers. Their numbers were never large enough that the numbers of people with access to this information or these teachings, to have any significant impact on the deep collective unconsciousness of the majority. Over time, some of those schools themselves became too rigidly formalized or conceptualized to remain effective. Spirituality, and we're new school. This is new school, baby. Spirituality and religion. What is the role of the established religions in the arising of the new consciousness? Many people are already aware of the difference between spirituality and religion. They realize that having a belief system, a set of thoughts that you regard as the absolute truth, does not make you spiritual, no matter what the nature of those beliefs is. In fact, the more you make your thoughts or beliefs into your identity, the more cut off you are from the spiritual dimension within yourself. And the truth is alive. The truth is living word, man. And it's constantly changing because we're constantly changing. Every moment, everything is reborn. It's true 100 years ago isn't necessarily true now, but that doesn't mean throw out the wisdom of our elders, because there are universal truths that are true throughout all of eternity and all of time and space. And those don't change. Many religious people are stuck at that level. They equate truth with thought, and as they are completely identified, but they've never really experienced their inner being or God consciousness. They equate with thought as they are completely identified with thought or their mind. They claim to be in sole possession of the truth, and everybody comes to their own truth at their own time. And some people aren't ready for where you're at with the truth, and you can't force it upon them. Everybody's at a different spot. We all start at the beginning, but we're all in different places within our growth, and that's fine. And we all always will have room to keep growing and evolving. That's the whole point. The universe will forever be expanding and evolving, and so will us. They don't realize the limitations of thought. Unless you believe or think exactly as they do, you are wrong in their eyes, and in the not too distant past. I used to be like this. They would have felt justified in killing you for that, and some still do, even now, and that's what's happening out there, you know. These things are very important. It's very important. I am so proud of you if you got through to this part of my video, and if you're actually going to use this to inspire you, to help be part of the change, and be the change you wish to see, and build a new earth with me and all of mankind. He's about to die, dude. It's to us that are still alive. The new spirituality, the transformation of consciousness, is arising to a large extent outside of the structures of the existing institutionalized religions. There were always pockets of spirituality, even in mind-dominated religions, although the institutionalized hierarchies felt threatened by them and often tried to suppress them. A large-scale opening of spirituality outside of the religious structures is an entirely new development. In the past, this would have been inconceivable, especially in the West, the most mind-dominated of all cultures, where the Christian church had a virtual franchise on spirituality. And that changed, especially in the 60s and 70s. A lot of gurus and people like Alan Watts brought Eastern philosophy to the Western world, and it changed everything. That's why that had a lot to do with all those changes that you saw in the 70s and the 60s. In the past, this would have been inconceivable, especially in the West, the most mind-dominated of all cultures, where the Christian church had a virtual franchise on spirituality. You couldn't just stand up and give a spiritual talk or publish a spiritual book unless you were sanctioned by the church. And if you were not, they would quickly silence you. But now, even within certain churches and religions, there are signs of change. It is heartwarming, and one is grateful for even the slightest signs of openness, such as Pope John Paul II visiting a mosque as well as a synagogue. And that's what we have to start doing. We have to start working together, different religions, different belief systems, atheists, agnostics, partly as a result of the spiritual teachings that have arisen outside of the established religions like his, but also due to an influx of the ancient Eastern wisdom teachings. A growing number of followers and people started doing yoga and meditating of traditional religions are able to let go of identification with form, dogma, and rigid belief systems, and discover the original depth that is hidden within their own spiritual tradition at the same time as they discover the depth within themselves. You don't need to throw out your religion if you have one. This is a time to truly, really go into it and experience it, and not just have it be a mental idol. They realize that how spiritual you are has nothing to do with what you believe, but everything to do with your state of consciousness. This in turn determines how you act in the world and interact with others, because that determines your thoughts. Those unable to look beyond form become even more deeply entrenched in their beliefs. That is to say, in their mind. We are witnessing not only an unprecedented influx of consciousness at this time, but also an entrenchment and intensification of the ego because it's fighting for its fucking survival. It's like its last death gasps. Because love and light will prevail. We are building heaven on earth right now as we speak. It has begun. Those seeds were planted thousands of years ago. Some religious institutions will be open to the new consciousness. Others will harden their doctrinal positions and become part of all those other man-made structures through which the collective ego will defend itself. And it's doing that right now. It's fighting back. Don't fight with it. Some churches, sects, cults, or religious movements are basically collective egoic entities as rigidly identified with their mental positions as the followers of any political ideology that is closed to any alternative interpretations of reality. Keep an open mind and hold your beliefs loosely. Wear the world like a loose garment. Gandhi said that. But the ego is destined to dissolve, and all its ossified structures, whether they be religious or other institutions, corporations, or governments, will disintegrate from within. And this has to happen. The ego disintegration has to happen. And this is why we need to cling to stuff like this right now, so we could get through that and that we could build anew. There is light at the end of the tunnel, I promise you. The ego is destined to dissolve, and all its ossified structures, whether they be religious or other institutions, corporations, or governments, will disintegrate from within. You don't have to do anything. It's going to happen on its own. Just work on being awakened yourself and living with loving intention. The most rigid structures, the most impervious to change, will collapse first. This has already happened in the case of Soviet communism. How deeply entrenched, how solid and monolithic it appeared, and yet within a few years it disintegrated from within. No one foresaw this, and I hope this is what's happening with capitalism. All were taken by surprise. There are many more such surprises in store for us. Capitalism must disintegrate from within. When faced with the urgency of transformation, when faced with the radical crisis, when the old way of being in the world, of interacting with each other and with the realm of nature doesn't work anymore, when survival is threatened by seemingly insurmountable problems, an individual life form or a species will either die or become extinct or rise above the limitations of its condition through an evolutionary leap. Take that leap. It is believed that the life forms on this planet first evolved in the sea. When there were no animals yet to be found on land, the sea was already teeming with life. Then at some point, one of the sea creatures must have started to venture onto dry land. It would perhaps crawl a few inches at first. There's that road never traveled. We got to take the road never traveled. Not the road less traveled, the road never traveled. Then at some point, one of the sea creatures must have started to venture onto dry land. It would perhaps crawl a few inches at first, then exhausted by the enormous gravitational pull of the planet, it would return to the water where gravity is almost non-existent and where it could live with much greater ease. And then it tried again and again, and much later would adapt to life on land, grow feet instead of fins, develop lungs instead of gills. All of life is a fucking miracle. I don't know why it's so hard to believe in miracles. Turning water into wine ain't shit compared to our existence. The existence of all the life forms on this planet and in the universe. That is the miracle. And then it tried again and again, the little guy, to get onto land from the sea. And much later would adapt to life on land, grow feet instead of fins, develop lungs instead of gills. It seems unlikely that a species would venture into such an alien environment and undergo an evolutionary transformation unless it was compelled to do so by some sort of crisis situation. And that's what's happening right now. There may have been a large sea area. This crisis is asking us to take that leap, take that jump in our evolution, that miraculous leap. And you got to have a miraculous level of faith to make it happen. There may have been a large sea area that got cut off from the main ocean where the water gradually receded over thousands of years, forcing fish to leave their habitat and evolve. Responding to a radical crisis that threatens our very survival, this is humanity's challenge now. The dysfunction of the egoic human mind, recognized already more than 2,500 years ago by the ancient wisdom teachers and now magnified through science and technology, is for the first time threatening the survival of the planet. Until very recently, the transformation of human consciousness, also pointed to by the ancient teachers, was no more than a possibility, realized by a few rare individuals here and there, irrespective of cultural or religious background. A widespread flowering of human consciousness did not happen because it was not yet imperative. It is imperative now. It's imperative, guys. If you can't see that, you're fucking blind. A significant portion of the Earth's population will soon recognize, if they haven't already done so, that humanity is now faced with a stark choice: evolve or die. A still relatively small but rapidly growing percentage of humanity is already experiencing within themselves the breakup of the old egoic mind patterns and the emergence of a new dimension of consciousness. We are ascending. I finally am, dude. I feel it now. I'm not always in that dimension, but it's slowly becoming my default. I didn't understand what it was until recently. But I can always choose to go back to 3D, stay there, and stay in my lower vibrational energy. It's up to me to choose with intention to live in that vibration. And that's what he's talking about. Evolve or die. What is arising now is not a belief system, a new religion, a spiritual ideology, or mythology. We are coming to the end not only of mythologies, but also of ideologies and belief systems. It's the age of Aquarius. Research Aquarius and Uranus if you want to understand more about that. The change goes deeper than the content of your mind, deeper than your thoughts. In fact, at the heart of the new consciousness lies the transcendence of thought. The newfound ability of rising above thought, of realizing a dimension within yourself that is infinitely more vast than thought. You then no longer derive your identity, your sense of who you are, from the incessant stream of thinking that in the old consciousness you take to be yourself. What a liberation to realize that the voice in my head is not who I am. Who am I then? The one who sees that. The one who is conscious of that truth. The awareness that is prior to the thought, the space in which that thought or the emotion or perception happens, is you. The ego is no more than this: identification with form, which primarily means thought forms. If evil has any reality, and it has a relative, not an absolute reality, this is evil doesn't really truly exist, because that which is real cannot be threatened and nothing unreal exists. Check the Course in Miracles to understand that one. If evil has any reality and it has a relative, not an absolute reality, this is also its definition: complete identification with form, physical forms, thought forms, emotional forms. That which is real cannot be threatened. That's the first sentence of A Course in Miracles. That which is real cannot be threatened. Only the love and light are real. That cannot be threatened. Do not live in fear. Evil's definition is complete identification with form, physical forms, thought forms, emotional forms. This results in a total unawareness of any connectedness with my whole, with my intrinsic oneness with every other, as well as with the source, with our being. This forgetfulness is the original sin, suffering, and delusion. When this delusion of utter separateness underlies and governs whatever I think, say, and do, what kind of world do I create? And most of us are on that plane of thought. To find the answer to this, observe how humans relate to each other. Read a history book or watch the news on television tonight. The degree of peace you feel within and the degree of peace you feel without will be your gauge and your emotional guidance system. Your emotions will tell you where you're at. If you're opening to the flow of being and of a higher consciousness or the egoic self, your feelings will tell you, and your degree of peace. If the structures of the human mind remain unchanged, we will always end up recreating fundamentally the same world, the same evils, and the same dysfunction. But now, after the 21st century and all those technological revolutions, we now have the ability to destroy the planet and ourselves and the universe on a level we've never had before. We have way too much power and not enough consciousness. It's a very fucking dangerous place to be, and we've already seen the effects of this. Don't think World War III can't happen. Although I don't think the universe will let it happen at this point. just kill us all off. So this is the very end of the first chapter of A New Earth. He says, a new heaven and a new earth. And this is, my phone is about to die. It's perfect timing. Proud of anybody that kept writing this with me. I'm rereading this with you so I can really ground his teachings into me, into my thinking and my being. I'm rereading this book after I get off, like I said. I'm going to finish it. I hope you do too. If I had money, I'd pay you to read it. I swear to God, if I was a rich person, I would just start paying people to educate themselves about spiritual things and to heal themselves. I would pay them to let me help them heal. So, a new heaven and a new earth, the flowering of human consciousness. The inspiration for the title of this book came from a Bible prophecy that seems more applicable now than at any other time in human history. It occurs in both the Old and the New Testament and speaks of the collapse of the existing world order and the arising of a new heaven and a new earth. We need to understand here that heaven is not a location but refers to the inner realm of consciousness. We need to understand here that heaven is not a location but refers to the inner realm of consciousness. Heaven is within. And the macrocosm is a reflection of the microcosm, as above, so below. It happens within, it happens without. So you start here, and it will reflect in the world around you. This is the esoteric meaning of the word, and this is also its meaning in the teachings of Jesus. He will really help you understand Jesus' teachings more than almost anybody I can think of. One of them. Earth, on the other hand, is the outer manifestation and form, which is always a reflection of the inner. Collective human consciousness and life on our planet are intrinsically connected. We are all responsible to each other, guys. Don't think you're not. And the more you do for others, you get back what you give threefold. You get more out of giving than the person you're giving to, I promise you. Even if you're an asshole, this will work for you. If you start putting other people before yourself or as important as yourself, and you start really trying to give to others and to help them, like, you won't believe what it will do for you and how much healing it will do for you and how much abundance it will bring into your life to keep that flow open. A new heaven is the emergence of a transformed state of consciousness, and a new earth is its reflection in the physical realm. Since human life and human consciousness are intrinsically one with the life of the planet, as the old consciousness dissolves, there are bound to be synchronistic, geographic, and climatic natural upheavals in many parts of the planet, some of which we are witnessing now. And I am devoting my life to being a spiritual teacher now. That is my life. I am single. I am childless. I've never been married. I don't have any real friends or family around these days. I talk to people on the phone a lot. And this is, I have nothing but time to give you. So I'm going to start, like I said, I'm going to release my first video probably next week. We'll see how it goes. I'm trying to really put time into it. And I'm going to talk about Eckhart Tolle a lot. And I'm going to talk about a lot of other people's teachings. And it's just, I'm going to do this, build this new earth. This is my role to play. Everybody has their own role. And we need everybody. We need people for all kinds of things. I love you. All my brothers and sisters, I love you. If I've ever been mean to you, if I've ever been rude to you, if I've ever hurt you in any way, I'm sorry. I love you. Please forgive me. Thank you. I am not that person anymore. I just want to help you not suffer anymore. I want to help this planet not suffer anymore. Let's build a new earth.